Hello, ladies and gentlemen. How are you today? Uh, we're going live again on my podcast. We are episode 8 right now. It's Sarkis Serge Belangichan III talking again, and you're Armenian singer and hockey player. And also, today we're not going to have live music. So I just want to let you all know that today I want to be talking about a really serious topic. So like I said, I want to be talking about a really serious topic right now. I want to be talking about Goldberg's undefeated streak in WCW and the finger poke of doom in WCW. So basically, Goldberg's undefeated streak, as you could see, Okay, so what happened was it was in Starrcade 1999 when Goldberg lost his undefeated streak, and then it followed to the finger poke of doom. Basically, it was the biggest downfall of WCW history because Goldberg was the WCW World Heavyweight Champion at that time, and he was holding a huge record. He was already 174-0. But his real record is 158-0. But WCW kind of miscounted that time, but he was 174-0 according to WCW records. Anyways, people, leave your comments down below and feel free to reach the phone number at 905-357-8444. Here, I'll write the phone number down for you guys can reach me. Anyways, before I get carried away with the finger poke of doom and Goldberg's undefeated streak, I just want to mention one thing. Tomorrow, it's my birthday. It's March 13th tomorrow. March 13th, I will be 37 years old. Also, I want to thank Radio Armenia Eterna, Radio Brazil for Sarkis Karamikian Jr. Thank you very much. He put one of my songs live on the air in Radio Brazil, my birthday song. I want to appreciate that. And also I want to mention too, for all wrestling fans who are local wrestling fans, that there will be an event Friday, March 22nd, 2024 at HPW Spring Slam 5. It will be in Hamilton, 863 King Street East, Hamilton. Doors open at 6:30. Tickets start at $20, or tickets are $20. Sorry about that. And I just want to mention my cousin, Sammy Blade. He will be appearing in that show. He will be having his first official professional wrestling match at Spring Slam 5 this Friday, March 22nd. I just got a comment from one of the fans. Happy birthday to you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. All right. So anyways, like I said, I have a serious topic for today. My topic is the Goldberg's undefeated streak in WCW and then the finger poke of doom. Okay, that was the biggest downfall. That started sinking the Titanic, if you ask me. That was a nail in the coffin the minute they killed Goldberg's undefeated streak. And by killing Goldberg's undefeated streak, I don't think it would have resulted to the finger poke of doom right after that. So anyways, I just want to say we got the ring here. So if this Goldberg's undefeated streak didn't happen, it was Starrcade 1999 at Washington, D.C. It was Goldberg, who is 174-0 and the WCW World Champion, versus the World War III Battle Royal winner, NWO Wolfpack leader Kevin Nash. He was the challenger for the WCW World title. Anyways, what happened during that match, as we all know, Basically, Bam Bam Bigelow tried to interfere. Goldberg had Nash with a spear. The referee was distracted on this side, and Goldberg and the security were trying to put them away. All the way from behind, right here in this corner, all of a sudden, Scott Hall had the taser, and he tased Goldberg with it, and Goldberg fell down. And then Scott Hall went back, and then as soon as Bam Bam Bigelow got out of the thing, Nash grabbed Goldberg and gave him the jackknife powerbomb, boom, and then he covered him 1, 2, 3. It was over. Kevin Nash was new world champion, and Goldberg lost his undefeated streak. But you know what? Not everybody was too happy about it. Maybe the fans up in New York or in Washington, D.C. or whatever, northern fans in the U.S., they were all happy for Nash because he's born and raised in Detroit, Michigan. But the problem is this led to the biggest, it was the death of WCW, in my opinion, I think. And the reason why it was the death of WCW, because rather than have Goldberg losing the undefeated streak, because Goldberg was red hot, and there was an interview with Bobby Heenan years ago, Bobby the Brain Heenan, a former wrestling manager and a broadcaster. He mentioned that with killing Goldberg's undefeated streak, number one, Goldberg was Jewish American from Atlanta, Georgia, and there was a lot of Jewish sponsors back then in the 90s, and there was a lot of people in the media who were Jewish, and Hollywood, and people who were sponsors and advertisers. They would have all been behind Goldberg. Even Bobby the Brain Heenan mentioned Goldberg should have been 3,000-0. He was the golden goose for WCW. Because, the storylines in WCW started to get all wishy-washy with the NWO Wolfpack, the Hollywood, and all this other stuff, the cruiserweights. Storylines were starting not to make sense, but the only thing that was keeping the storylines alive and keeping the storylines way more interesting is when Goldberg had the WCW World Heavyweight title and he was undefeated. Even though it was a little bit too early to have Goldberg winning the WCW World title, he did it a few months prior to the match he lost, right? He beat Hollywood Hulk Hogan in his hometown in Atlanta, Georgia, all right? There was no build-up to the storyline. Just one day in WCW Thunder, it was a Thursday night, J.J. Dillon, the manager and the president or whatever he was in WCW, he announced that Goldberg will face Hollywood Hulk Hogan for the world title. However, the problem was there was no storyline buildup. Goldberg already was WCW US champion, but before that, he was only undefeated for a year. He debuted in 1997, Goldberg, and he beat a lot of mid-carders and below mid-carders. All Goldberg would do is 3 moves. He would just go in the ring, squash the opponent, do the spear, and then do the jackhammer and beat them 1, 2, 3. Goldberg was not a real technical wrestler yet, so there was a lot of things they had to do, to keep him, how do I say it, to keep him from getting exposed, because he wasn't very technical in the ring. But he had the perfect physique, he had the perfect body, and he had the perfect character, okay? And all he needed to do was just go in there and do a squash match and win at the end. So even though they put the world title on him too soon, they did it in Atlanta, Georgia against Hollywood Hulk Hogan. He ended up beating Hollywood Hogan for the world title. And after that, the ratings went up in WCW and they started winning again the ratings. Even though they were down with the ratings, they wanted to get ratings. Instead of doing that, why didn't they get Goldberg to stay undefeated and keep him to stay strong that way and undefeated? Why didn't they get him to go to World War III in the pay-per-view, win the whole World War III pay-per-view, and then he becomes the number one contender to face Hollywood Hulk Hogan at Starrcade. And Starrcade could have been in his hometown, Atlanta, Georgia. Imagine how many more pay-per-view buys WCW could have had. They had it in Atlanta, Georgia, in Starrcade, and Goldberg would have been the #1 contender and undefeated to face Hollywood Hulk Hogan for it. And from there on, that would have been even more interesting. However, even though they didn't go with that plan, but they decided to get Goldberg to win on WCW Monday Nitro, which is still a good thing, and Goldberg was still undefeated, and he became the world champion, and he also became the WCW United States champion same time. Okay, even though it led to the part where Kevin Nash, he became the World War III winner in 1998. He won the World War III Battle Royal match, and he became the #1 contender to face Goldberg at Starrcade 99. Rather than have Goldberg lose the fucking undefeated streak, why didn't they do this? While they're having the match together, okay, and Goldberg ends up giving him a spear, and he ends up giving Nash the jackhammer in the air. Right before the ref counts the 1, 2, 3, why didn't the NWO Wolfpack guys come here? Sting was part of the Wolfpack. Lex Luger was Macho Man. I don't have all the wrestlers right here. Why didn't they distract the ref and whatever, and Goldberg's trying to count? And then from behind, maybe Scott Hall would have came and tasered him right in the bald head right here. And then he would have went this way, and he would have grabbed Nash this way and put him on the Goldberg and to cover, right? This time he goes for the cover, 1, 2, and Goldberg kicks out rather than have him beat. And then this time Nash grabs him out and tries to go for the jackhammer. And this time, instead of getting the jackhammer, Goldberg just flips him over. And then he tries to go for the spear again, and this time Hall gets up, and then he punches him. Then this other NWO guy gets up. This time NWO guy's getting in the ring. The referee gets knocked out. And besides the referee getting knocked out, all the NWO Hollywood guys go in the ring, and this time the Hollywood guys and the Wolfpack guys are against each other. They all get in the ring. They start kicking the crap out of Kevin Nash. They kick the crap out of Goldberg. And this, that. What would happen is, let's say this would have happened instead. Everyone would beat the crap out of each other. NWO Hollywood guys, NWO Wolfpack guys. The ring gets breaking down. And the pay-per-view goes off live on the air. And on the same time as they're beating the crap out of somebody, Goldberg would do a kayfabe injury. He would be injured, but he would not lose the WCW World title. That means he's still undefeated. He's still the WCW World Heavyweight Champion. However, Goldberg is injured right now, so he's on the sidelines. But what happens is they break down the ring, and NWO guys from Wolfpack Hollywood, they beat the crap out of each other. They tear the ring down. The match ends up in a no contest this time. It ends up in a no contest. So that means Goldberg is still undefeated. This time the next night on Monday Nitro, fans are all furious. Fans are all wondering. There was no finish to the match. What are they going to do? The World Heavyweight Champions injured. So it becomes a huge clusterfuck. It becomes like something nobody knows what to expect this time. Even though in WWF Monday Night Raw, they were starting to win the ratings, and they were doing the corporate ministry angle. Stephanie McMahon, Vince McMahon, Shane McMahon, and the corporation and the ministry alliance with Steve Austin, and they were having a McMahon family crisis in WWF, and they were showing that live on the air, and they were winning the ratings. This is what WCW could have done instead, and I don't think they would have started losing the ratings that bad, and the numbers wouldn't have dropped so bad, I believe. What they could have done the next Monday night on WCW Nitro, after this thing that happened in the Starrcade main event where Goldberg got injured and the ring got collapsed and everybody started kicking the crap out of each other. The next Monday night on Nitro, Kevin Nash would have came in the ring with his posse, with his crew, the NWO Wolfpack guys, Kevin Nash would have been all furious about it. He would have grabbed the microphone and he would have called Hollywood Hulk Hogan out. He would have just said, "Hogan, get your ass over here. I want you right now. This has gone beyond personal," or whatever. Nash would have cut a good promo right there, I think. And Kevin Nash would have called Hogan out because Hogan ended up costing Kevin Nash the world title. Kevin Nash ended up, the match ended up in a no contest. So now they got a personal vendetta against each other. Hollywood Hogan and his crew, they come to the ring and they start with kicking the crap out of each other and whatever, right? This time, week after week, while Goldberg is on the sidelines, as you all know, he's still the world heavyweight champion and is still undefeated 174-0. Because that match ended up in a no contest. It didn't count and he did not get pinned or nothing. What they could have done is, week after week, it could have been an intense storyline. NWO Wolfpack guys would jump NWO Hollywood guys. NWO Hollywood guys would jump the NWO Wolfpack guys backstage, and they would also beat up WCW officials, WCW wrestlers backstage too. Also, the Four Horsemen could have got involved with Ric Flair and this and that, And at that time, WCW president was Ric Flair, and the Four Horsemen could have got involved. This time it would have been chaos, week after week, match after match. Every match in WCW, they jump in, they start attacking certain wrestlers, they interrupt this and that, It ends up in disqualifications and whatever. Basically, not only the NWO Hollywood guys are jumping WCW guys, Wolfpack guys are doing that too, and they're also attacking WCW personnel or employees or officials. But in the same time, they're kicking the crap out of each other too in the same time. Eventually, the storyline would have led to, it would have got so intense after 3-4 months. And while Goldberg is still on the sidelines as world champion and is still undefeated, one day they would go in the ring and they would really have an intense storyline after 2-3 pay-per-views. Eventually, Hogan and Nash, they would come to a conclusion where they would say, because while Goldberg's storyline as being the undefeated world champion was pretty hot, NWO Hollywood and NWO Wolfpack storyline was getting hot too. And also the NWO, whether it was black and white or red and black, Hollywood or Wolfpack, they did not need the world heavyweight title. They were a niche market. They were making billions of dollars just from selling t-shirts. And they were already box office attraction because of that. Finally, after 2-3 months of storylines, they would all come face to face to each other. And they would agree to one thing. There ain't enough room for the both of us. So one of us have to take over the entire NWO faction. And one of us have to, quit the NWO and leave WCW for good. So they would come to that agreement. And they would decide a match for the next pay-per-view, and they would decide a cage match. So basically after a few months, when they decide, after that heated rivalry and they beat the crap out of each other, they decide Hogan and Nash, they're going to face each other, and one of them is going to take over the entire NWO faction. And this is where, instead of doing the finger poke of doom and joining the NWO black and white and red and black together, this would have been a better way to do it, because Hogan and Nash, they hate each other's guts. So it's better they have a bloody match. And Ric Flair would come out and announce that they're going to have a cage match in a next pay-per-view. And the thing is, in the cage match, there would be no interference, this and that. And there would be weapons inside the cage, this and that, And in the next pay-per-view, while they're going at it with each other, whoever wins takes over the entire NWO faction. Whoever loses, they have to get fired and they have to leave. That's the agreement. And the president, Nature Boy Ric Flair, made that arrangement, and they both agree. and they do a contract signing for that. This time it gets to the next pay-per-view. This time while they're having their match, they kick the crap out of each other, weapons, this and that. NWO, black and white guys, they try to jump in the cage and try to help Hollywood Hogan to win. NWO Wolfpack guys that are on Kevin Nash's side, they try to help Kevin Nash win. And it becomes a really bloody mess. And finally, in the end, one of the NWO Wolfpack guys, maybe Scott Hall or maybe Macho Man or Sting, somebody, doesn't matter. They end up betraying Kevin Nash. They hit him from behind. They end up costing Kevin Nash to lose the match. So they jump ship. They jump over to Hollywood Hogan's crew, and they backstab Kevin Nash, one of the guys. And then Hollywood Hogan ends up winning the whole cage match and whatever. This time, Hollywood Hogan owns the whole faction. He owns the entire NWO faction. Kevin Nash got fired. Kevin Nash left. And this time you got all the NWO guys. Some of the guys, they don't agree with Nash. I mean, some of the guys don't agree with Hollywood Hogan, but they have no choice but to be part of the faction. They could have way more storylines going forward. So this is one idea of what they could have done. Okay, somebody just wrote me, get over it. It was 25 years ago. Wrestling storylines are meant to change every time. The style of wrestling changes every day. Are you fucking stupid? Are you fucking serious right now? Yes, I agree with one thing. The style of wrestling changes every generation. I get that. However, this storyline, when Goldberg was undefeated with the WCW World title, okay, that was the only thing that was keeping WCW alive at that time. Because people wanted to see Goldberg win match after match, go over guys every time. Goldberg did not have to lose the undefeated streak. Don't you stupid people get that? Like I said, instead of him losing, if they would have went with this storyline instead, they would have manipulated the storylines more, and they could have had Goldberg winning the world title a few more years after that. He would have stayed undefeated, not just 174-0. He could have been 4,000-0. Eventually, as few years passed by, there was talks where Kurt Angle first, he did not get signed for WWF. He probably would have got signed in 99 or 2000, or maybe in 2002, 2003. Brock Lesnar would have probably went to WCW, as Goldberg's still undefeated for 4 or 5 more years. Maybe you would have built another character like one of these guys and keep them undefeated. They would have been the biggest challenge for Bill Goldberg. So rather than Kevin Nash being the guy that beat Goldberg at Starrcade 1999, it could have went this way. It could have ended up in a no contest. The ring could have collapsed. The NW guys could have kicked the crap out of each other left and right. The next following Monday night in Nitro, they could have had an intense rivalry, and the storylines with the NWO Wolfpack and Black and White, the storylines could have kept on going with that. And eventually, Nash and Hogan could have had a cage match, and winner takes over the NWO and whatnot. And anyways, as I was going, right after Hogan won Nash and he got betrayed, and he took over the entire NWO faction after all that intense storyline or whatever, there's also some guys, they don't want to be part of Hogan's regime, but they have no choice because they're part of the NWO clique. They're part of the gang right there. What they could do is, okay, this time Hogan got the whole faction, and this time the NWO guys with Hogan, they're going backstage. They're beating the crap out of WCW guys, and they think they're more superior now, and they want to take over. And Hogan is, since Goldberg, the undefeated world champion, is still injured and he's in the sidelines after Starrcade because he got injured. Hogan demands that the world heavyweight title is given to him because the undefeated world champion is nowhere to be shown for the last 3-4 months. So Hogan believes he deserves to be the champion. And Ric Flair comes out with the Four Horsemen, of course. And Ric Flair says, you cannot be given the world title. After all, Goldberg's an undefeated world champion, this and that, and he never lost. However, what he can do is while Goldberg's undefeated, he can do a tournament with 16 men with qualification matches, this and that. So they could have had a huge tournament going. And Hogan would have been part of it. All these other guys would have been part of it. Sting, Luger, Ric Flair, Scott Steiner, so many big names they had in WCW. They could have had a huge tournament going. Eventually in the tournament, after a few more weeks and then next pay-per-view, it would have been the tournament finals for the WCW World Heavyweight title. Okay. Eventually, during that tournament, after that big tournament, when Hogan is, it would be Hogan in the finals versus another guy. Let's say it could be Sting, it could be anybody, okay? But this time, this match ends up in a no contest too. The WCW champion would not be crowned. This time, all of a sudden, Goldberg's intro music would hit. All of a sudden, Goldberg is not injured anymore, and he's finally back from injury. And he comes out with his WCW World title. And he would go in the ring, and he would go in there, and he'd collapse everybody. He would knock everybody down. He would spear everybody's ass. Even Hogan would be in big shock. The whole world would have been in big shock. So basically what would happen is not only Goldberg is still undefeated, and also for that tournament, they did not crown a new world champion. So technically he is still the world champion. And week after week, Goldberg still wins squash matches and this and that, and they would have went a few years with the storyline angle going. They could have manipulated more storylines and making things interesting. And even though WCW, they did not have good booking and this and that, right? What they could have done was they could have, kept Goldberg undefeated basically for more years until they would have came up with somebody that can, replace him and become the new world champion, like somebody who's. Anywho, I'm checking out the messages again. Well, I'm glad some of you agree with me with this storyline angle, and some of you don't. So basically, that's that, I'm looking at the comments. Happy birthday to me. Thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate it very much. You're awesome. Oh, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. All right. Write your comments down below if you have any questions. Oh, looks like I'm getting a phone call right now. Hello, you are live on the air with Sarkis Serge Malangic on the third. We're talking about the finger poke of doom and the in WCW and Goldberg's undefeated streak as world champion. What are your thoughts?
Hey, buddy, that was 25 years ago. Get over it, man. The storyline changed in 25 years. You're living in the past. Wake up and smell the coffee. Like, what are you doing?
Okay. Hold on a second. You're saying that 25 years ago. Yeah, even though it was 25 years ago, I still cannot get over the fact that Goldberg lost the undefeated streak for the world title. The storyline started to get screwed up. Storylines didn't make sense right after he lost. And that is why WCW started getting smashed in the ratings. they end up losing the ratings
Listen,
more because there was no
we are in
coming back.
21st century. Man, we are in 21st century. Where you are? Which year you're living?
Well,
Like,
25 years ago, it was 1999. We were just 1 year away from 21st century.
okay, the things been changed by now.
Yeah, however,
I live the day by day.
I understand so many wrestling storylines can change. So many belts, wrestling titles can change hands. I get that. But when you have a world champion that's undefeated, and he's been undefeated for more than 2 years, nobody wants to see the undefeated streak get broken because none of the storylines ever made sense after that. You get that? Like, seriously, I don't know what you're talking about. If Goldberg would have kept the undefeated streak, right after Goldberg's undefeated streak, and then it led to the finger poke of doom, that stupid thing, where Hogan just put his finger on Kevin Nash, and Kevin Nash took the fall, and Hogan pinned him 1, 2, 3. Then the belt went to Hollywood Hogan. It got so stupid right after that. Week after week, they came up with stupid storylines. They didn't even have good storyline matches. They didn't even have, none of the storylines made sense at WCW anymore. When WCW back in 1998, 97, 96, they started having 5-star ratings. Their ratings went up to 5, 5.5, 6, 6.5. Right after the finger poke of doom and Goldberg's undefeated streak, WCW's ratings were going down to 3-star ratings. It went down to 3.0 while WWF was having 5, 6-star ratings. WWF started to kick their ass in the ratings because of this. This is where people don't get it when it comes to Goldberg's undefeated streak. Because the WCW storylines did not make any sense anymore. They kept doing the same stupid things with NWO, Wolfpack, Hollywood, Four Horsemen, this and that, the cruiserweights. While WWF, they had a bunch of nude girls showing off their tits and this and that, and they had Sable, Deborah, bikini contests. Or they had Val Venus, porking somebody's woman or whatever at WWF. Also, they had the Vince and Shane McMahon soap opera, father and son, and Stephanie McMahon, the McMahon family, the corporate ministry. They were kicking WCW's ass in the ratings. The only thing that was keeping WCW alive, it was Goldberg's undefeated streak. And they could have had sponsors, they could have had all these people to be behind Goldberg. And you know what? Eventually, Goldberg, even though he was only a year and a half undefeated as WCW World Champion, eventually they could have got sponsors to sell him merchandise. They could have got him to do Pepsi or Coke commercials and this and that, Anyways, I think that's a wrap for today. Another time I'll be talking about other pay-per-view matches in WCW or WWF, one of these things. But like I said, always remember what I said. It was way too early to kill Goldberg's WCW undefeated streak. Even if you would have kept him as the World Heavyweight Champion 3,000 or 5,000 more times, it could have just kept going. That was the only thing that the storyline was making sense in WCW. It kept making sense. It was getting better, if anything. There were some people, they couldn't wait. Basically, there was anticipation every week in WCW. There was people who wanted to see Goldberg eventually lose his winning streak. And there was people who did not want to see him lose it at all. And I was one of the fans, for God's sakes, who did not want him to lose. Majority of people were always chanting, Goldberg, 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 they were chanting. And Goldberg was still WCW World Heavyweight Champion, and he was undefeated. 90% of the wrestling fans of the whole world, nobody wanted to see Goldberg lose the undefeated streak. How stupid was WCW management for letting this happen? I don't care if they did a lot of stupid storylines and the wishy-washy storylines that none of them made sense. But Goldberg losing the undefeated streak, none of the shit mattered anymore because Goldberg was the number one guy. He was the top guy. He was squashing everybody in the ring. He was kicking everybody's ass in the ring. The thing is, the minute you make Goldberg lose his prestigious undefeated streak and the world title, that means Goldberg is the same as everybody else after that. This time you don't have the strongest guy in WCW. You don't have the toughest guy in the whole thing. Because he took, all his matches were squash matches. They only took 2-3 minutes. He would just go in there, he would spear somebody, he would jackhammer somebody, and that's it. So basically, right after Goldberg's undefeated streak died, WCW ship started to sink. You guys have to understand that. Anyways, this is going to be a wrap for today. Thank you all for being here, and leave your comments down below. Once again, we're going to be doing this podcast, even though today is Tuesday. I was going to do this podcast yesterday, but unfortunately I didn't have the time to do all that. Anyways, stay tuned in all my live episode podcasts. It will be every Monday. Today was episode 8. Next week will be episode 9, and I'll have more storylines and more things to talk about when it comes to wrestling. Anyways, have yourselves a wonderful day. Leave your comments down below, and feel free to call at 905-357-8444. Thank you all for being part of this episode, because the reason why this thing has been bothering me also for the last 25 years since Goldberg lost the undefeated streak, and I'm sure it probably bothered a lot of wrestlers, a lot of wrestling fans, I should say. And the only reason it bothered us so much, even though it was 25 years ago, that is why wrestling is not good anymore. That is why when WCW got collapsed, like, it wasn't the same anymore. Didn't make sense. And the reason why I brought this up, it's because none of the old school wrestlers that are doing podcasts, or none of the old school promoters like Eric Bischoff, 83 Weeks, I'm sure he had over an hour-long conversation about the finger poke of doom and Goldberg's undefeated streak. Even him, he didn't know what to come up with. Even Jim Cornette, he didn't know what to come up with. Even Vince Russo, even so many great legends who were in wrestling. See, only Bobby the Brain Heenan, he had the vision where Goldberg he was the golden goose, and he should have stayed undefeated as long as possible, because it was way too early to kill his thing. But so many people, they said the finger poke of doom was wrong, and Goldberg's undefeated streak, killing his undefeated streak, was wrong. But nobody came up with this solution. Basically, I'll keep it in simplest terms. Goldberg not losing at Starrcade 1999. It ends up in a no contest. The ring gets collapsed. All the NW guys beat the crap out of each other. The referee gets knocked out. The next Monday Night Nitro, Nash and Hogan, they have a gang war. They kick the crap out of each other. They tear down WCW building and all the wrestlers and whatever and the banners. Eventually, a few months later, Nash and Hogan, they have a cage match to decide who gets to take over the whole NWO faction, and they get a real bloody and bruised up match. It becomes blood all over the ring, all over the cage. And one of them gets to take over the entire NWO faction, and eventually Goldberg comes back, and Goldberg's undefeated streak lives on. And they could have really pulled it out of their ass, I think, and they could have kept the Monday Night Wars going for a few more years. Anyways, another time I will also talk about the WCW invasion angle when Vince McMahon bought out WCW, which they could have perfected even more or better. So anyways, stay tuned every Mondays. See you guys next week for episode 9. Thank you all and love you all. Have a wonderful evening today.